My name is Max Young. I'm a principal with CapBPM Software, a division of Capital Innovations. And today we're introducing IQ, which is our vendor-agnostic, business-facing, no-code, AI-based discovery to deployment tool. So what we do, we create, manage, document, and deploy processes and rules. We create beautiful open source, open standard UIs. We do data cap, and we do microservice orchestration. What we don't do, we are not a BPM, BRMS, or RPA engine. Where we feel like we can contribute is the ability to create models, process models, and UIs, data cap, and integration. So we don't make cars. We make really schmancy leather seats that sit in your car. So we see three problems. The first problem is that WYSIWYG vendors that are provided by your vendor are fast, but you have to invest in training a small fragment of your work staff in a niche technology that can only work in one proprietary platform, right? Everyone is seeing this. You can't use Sailed or Coach Views or Pega in any other space. So as a CIO, you're hostage to the limitations of the small amount of your team that's trained in that UI, and the learning curve is steep and prohibitive. So our WYSIWYG editor is a little bit different. It generates conventional open source code that is 99% agnostic. It uses an AI to execute recommendations on the layout, look, and feel, and it automates self-discovery for the data model. So our modeling is a little bit different too. Users can create process based on existing industry best standards and align those with industry standard data models. So you can come over here, choose from a set of templates, and these templates then turn around and become executable processes within minutes. So our modeling supports simulations and optimization, Lean Six Sigma, DMAIC, and all the schmancy soups. Moreover, we also support three-dimensional modeling. So you can actually model all the way down to the way that your logical infrastructure is laid out. So when you have a use case, you can talk about which database and which port it's actually working on. Our data models allow you to actually define a model that's associated with the view. So this is the abstraction of the data model. And then our AI engine makes a recommendation for you for how that should be laid out. That can be customized. We also allow you to generate all these kinds of charts, including optimizations, simulations, custom optimizations and simulations, so defining your own variables, and seeing how all of that affects your process. Another problem that we see in this world is that proprietary easy integrations present the same objection as WYSIWYG. If you use the vendors, you're stuck. So you're better off abstracting the integration and calling it RESTfully. That was a point to my question. Nevertheless, we have two mechanisms. One, for Swagger, WSDL, Waddle, and REST, we offer a UI drag-and-drop mechanism to do binding and invocation. And then we also offer these out-of-the-box integrations in our tool, because we think the integration should happen at the application layer. Microservice orchestration looks like this. These invoke your microservice container and invoke this sequence in whatever that native language is. That's how you map the output of one service to another. It generates code behind the covers. The reason is that customer expectations are set by Tesla and Alexa and AWS, and their last best experience becomes the minimum expectation that they have. So what we're trying to do is give them that marquee premier vendor experience without tying them into a vendor. So we offer best practices, simulations, use case animations, simple user UIs, custom dashboards, imports from logs and Visio and Excel and even PDF files. And our goal is to empower the business while still supporting IT. So our apps are 100% white box and can be taken over by IT at any time. You could have hand-coded everything that we develop for you. It's just you couldn't have done it as fast. So the business can model, simulate, build, and deploy applications based on us, and they can do it to their target BPM engine, and then they can use the WYSIWYG to generate white box, conventional, open source code. So this code has rigorous quality standards, and it works out of the box. This is what we can currently export to, and this is what we can currently import from. We have a grammar that allows us to define new imports and new exports. And the point of that is to be able to very quickly take on new ones. So I imagine Process Maker will be in here pretty soon. So our goal is to allow the customer to speak their process story. Oh, this is the next last thing. We're also working on a voice-to-text-based AI-driven process creation. These are not the droids you're looking for. So what we're trying to do is come up with a grammar that allows customers to speak their story, and I'm going to try and demonstrate that for you. It's probably not going to work because I just got the bill this morning. Okay. So let me show you how IQ works. And I invite questions as we go through this process. So feel free to stop me and ask me stuff. If I don't like it, I'll tell you to shush. That's really annoying.
Jonathan is very annoying. Yeah. Can you reinsert that? Because it looks like there's a problem.
Okay. So first and foremost, our application is 100% web-based. So there's nothing to install. You can do it on your private cloud or public. You log in with your credentials, which can actually be hooked if you install on a private cloud back into your internal LDAP. So we can actually hook into that security model. What you're seeing here is the capacity to create new processes. The first thing that we offer is the ability to start a new process. That is really distracting. Hope no one in here goes into seizures. So just like in Microsoft Word, where you can come in and say, I want to create a template for a resume or a brochure or whatever you like, what we've tried to do is identify a complete set of, well, not a complete set, but a pretty good set of processes that we found compelling based on our own very subjective experience. One of the interesting things that we provide here is that you can actually purchase new processes from the marketplace. So you could actually come in, solicit someone to create a process for you, and that would actually show up to here. So if you want an expert to do something for you, you can purchase that. The way these work is that you can come in, you can see the diagram of what it is you're building, you can see if there's the data model for it, and then you can just come right in and build that thing. So I'm going to call this, I don't know, A17. Today's the 18th. I can customize this, so I can set the way that I want the look and feel to be. I can choose the color schemes. I can track business objects, which I'll come back to in just a moment. So what's happening right now is that the application is actually going on the fly, and it's pulling that data model, it's pulling that process model, it's swooshing them together, and it's come back with this. So what this is the abstract representation of your data model. This is the design of it. So you can come over here and say, I want you to lay this out for me. 2 column, 3 column, 4 column, 6 column. You can customize this. You can actually create canonical representations of your objects. So you can come here and say, hey, when I talk about a customer, I mean this. I mean this. And the UI representation of a customer looks like this. And all of this is actually internally being driven by the AI engine. It keeps track of what category of fields you group together, what their labels are, even what activities you use them in, and how you categorize those. So it comes back and it makes recommendations. And it says, you know, I've noticed you like first names next to last names. I'm just going to start doing that until you don't like it anymore. So these canonical representations can be customized. They can be project level, personal level, or enterprise level. You can come over here and see what the visualization for this whole thing is. And then you can come and actually see what the diagram is. The diagram can be deep, showing different layers interacting with each other. And you can build and deploy this right now. If you want to do, so let me show you a couple of things here. I think I had one that I had built previously. So for each one of your diagrams, each one of your activities, you can actually come in here and articulate the Six Sigma tabs. So you can actually articulate problems. Let's see here, I can bring this up. You can do RPN calculations. You can do SWOT qualifications. And then you can actually come in and see analysis for that. One of the things that we do that's kind of interesting is in our SWOT analysis, we actually allow you to say that something is, for example, a 7 on a strength, but also, I don't know, a 2 on a weakness, or a 9 on an opportunity, right? So you can have a multidimensional perspective to that. And you can use this mechanism to qualify any category you like. So one of the things that we do when we do this is we actually allow customers to measure happiness. We literally put that in as a metric, and we give it a strength based on what customers are telling us. You can go to dashboards. So what you're seeing here is that I've got a process that I've taken the very same process, and on the one hand, I've deployed it to IBM BPM, and on the other hand, I've deployed it to Commanda. And the way that they actually integrate together is that they work together through a RESTful call. So in this particular one, actually, I don't think this is the one. I think I had a pet store one that did this. So this is our process here. Take that off. So you've got a customer who views and selects a pet. It goes to the sales associate who confirms that the pet is there. Then if the pet is available, the vet gives it a shot, and then the person has some time to accept it, or they time out, and otherwise they put the pet back into inventory. So I've got the exact same process deployed to both Commanda and to IBM. We've built dashboards and landing pages for all of them. They don't interact. They're separate from each other, except insofar that they're actually talking to the same Swagger files. So when one of them adds a pet, the other one will be able to see it. Does that make sense to everyone? I can come into this guy, and I can do things like do simulations. So I can say, hey, I'm interested in execution time, and I want to know about happy path and exception paths, and I want to know about my KPIs. And I can come right into here. And then based on the probabilities and the weights that I've put into each one of these activities, it'll actually tell me where my paths are. So I could say, let's say that this guy is an exception path, and I have, I don't know, a 60% probability of doing this. And this one is my happy path, and I've got a 40% probability of doing this. And I want to know how that affects things. So I can come back in here, rerun that sim, and actually see the value of that. What's important about this is that it allows me to work with my customer and go, maybe we need to put a decision here that'll start weeding this out a little bit better. And this decision can actually be a gateway to a DMN notation, right? So I can actually come into here and go, I actually want to create a new process, and it's going to be my rules. And in this guy, I'm going to have a bunch of decision tables, and we only support decision tables. And we want to go doing this. So what happens is that you can go from your leveling and say, really what's happening is that when we hit this guy, we're really jumping over here. And then we take this and we translate it to the native rule implementation of the target environment. It's not as nuanced and as articulate as what you would actually get in that environment. You can go way above what we can do, but this is a good way to get you started. And our goal with this is to allow customers to have the ability to very quickly generate applications using the WYSIWYG features that we all like, but at the end of the day, generate open source applications, which when they become sufficiently complex, you can just hand it off to your IT team. My vision is that if you are a CIO and you've got all these developers and only this front row is trained in your BPM technology of choice, I don't want you to be constrained to only doing BPM with these guys. I want you to bring everybody to the party. Does that make sense? Okay. So what I'm going to do now is actually going to try and build a process. And I can actually do this in one of two ways. I can create these type wizards, which I was showing you before. I can create a wizard, which asks me questions, and I answer the question and builds the process for me. Did I say two ways? I lied. Or I can actually import from multiple sources. So I can import from BlueWorks, from IBM, from BPMN 2.0, from Visio, from CSV, and then from a format called XFDL, which almost no one knows. The CSV is interesting because it allows us to take the output of decision or log analysis tools and use that to actually build processes. So tools like Disco, we can take the output of that and use that to engineer a process that represents what you're actually doing. But to be clear, we don't do what Disco does. That's a whole different scope, and that's not our bread and butter. So what I'd like to do is just build a pet store really fast with an integration and show you how that works. But if you guys have a different process you want to see, you can call it out. If you're feeling persnickety, this is the time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So I'm going to come in, and I'm going to create a custom process. And I'll call this PS. It's going to have 3 activities in it. So PS is going to be work with a pet entity. And I can define these entities here. Or I can define an entire construct here, including list and sub-elements and all that kind of stuff. Or I can use canonical ones. For the interest of time, I'm going to use a canonical one. So I'll come over here. This is my design. Going to auto lay it out. And it's got actually kind of a funky layout. So I'm going to say, I want this over here. And I want the name over here. I'm going to get rid of this guy. And I don't know. I'm going to make this thing required. So I can come into here and go, this field is required. And I can associate either a state change from another variable, or I can associate logic right here. Also, and this is important for those of you who are sort of BPM practitioners, one of the things that I can do with the tool is that I can, at the end of the day, generate Angular 5, React code, Bootstrap 4, or Material UI, or any combination thereof. So the reason that's important is because I can do things like use webhooks to provide simultaneous updates, so that if you're working on a parallel split and someone's doing this to customer X and someone else is doing that, they'll automatically get the webhook code generation in Java so that those guys sync together. All right, so we come over here, we have this guy, and I'm going to go to my visualization, see how it looks. It's not too terrible. Go to my diagram. Whoa, there we go. And let's say I'm going to put in HR over here, and I'm going to put in manager. So we go from Form 1 to Form 2 to Form 3. I think I inadvertently created an approval process. I think that's my instinct. So we're creating this process here. This is what the UI looks like. This is what the diagram looks like. And then I can actually come into here and say, hey, I want you to take this guy, and I want you to deploy it to IBM BPM. So what's happening right now is the tool is actually talking to Watson. It's going out and it's translating the labels for all my fields into the 12 most popular languages on the planet. It's coming and bringing those labels back and embedding them into the application. It's going to go build a 100% responsive mobile UI application with a custom dashboard. It's going to deploy to IBM BPM. Then it's going to generate a link to that dashboard, bring it back, and let me log into it. I also have the capacity to send out an email to a list of people so that they can log into it. So the way that I use this when I'm working with customers is we'll sit down and we'll model out the process, and I'll just throw a data model together. And I'll mail it to everyone who's sitting around the conference room table. And I'll say, let's drive through this. And they'll say, OK, you got here. I'm going to need this field over here, and I'm going to need this field over here, and this isn't right, and that should be a drop-down. And we'll just make a change right there and then. So the result of my design sessions is actually a working prototype, which I can do as quickly as I'm doing this. So I come over here, logging into my IBM BPM server, which is in the cloud for us. And then while I'm doing that, I'm actually going to come and create the very same thing with Camunda. So it's actually exporting that now. And the Camunda deployment is actually a little more nuanced. So the first thing it does is that it deploys the process to Camunda. And then it creates a completely open source Java application, a Maven project. And then that has already got all the hooks in it to talk to that particular application. So we come over here. This is the process that we just built. You can actually see that it's deployed and working. This is the step that I'm on. Here's the form. Here's the form. And you can actually see that it's a working form. It's actually skinned for a particular customer. Let me see if the Camunda is done, and it is. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to choose whether I want to do Angular or Bootstrap, and I'm going to choose whether I want to do web analytics or not. One of the interesting things about this is that we capture everything, and we send it off to a data warehouse and to web analytics. And you can choose your analytics engine. What that means is I track how long your mouse lingers at a certain point on the screen. I track what you click on. I track the sequence of flow as you're going through your pages. I do all this out of the box. And then as far as the actual data, I track every time you load a page. I track every time you change the page. I track who you are and when you logged in. And I stick all that into a data warehouse. In addition to that, every time I call an integration, I track when I call it, and I track when it comes back. And I track what it was and what it wasn't. All right, so I'm going to validate and generate this. And let me see if I've already got a working one of these. So here's one I actually just built recently. So this is actually logging into my Camunda engine. I can come over here, create get pet. Brings this guy up. And this actually has integration. So I do this, and you'll notice we got back Billy the dog, right? So it just works. The same thing actually works for the IBM BPM stuff. So we take the information that we have and we create connectors, we wrap that, and we deploy it in the native sort of format of that tool. So we're not generic in how we do this. We're actually customized to that goal. If you come into this guy and you say, for example, this is Jojo, and you submit, you can actually come over here. And let me see if I can find this. So I think here's @pet. Oh, that's the actual service. Pet store. So you can actually see where we are. You can actually see the data. So our vision here is that we can sort of allow you to have the rapid application building and capacity and the latitude that gives you, because you can make mistakes so fast so that you can get them out of your system, and also to allow you to be agnostic to your BPM engine. That's sort of what we're trying to get to here. I feel like there are a lot of really great BPM engines out there. I've worked for a couple of these excellent companies, and I think they all have their strengths. But one thing that's consistent is that, from what I know, most of them have proprietary. If they have a nuanced UI, it's proprietary. And I think that's actually against the better mission of even those vendor companies. Because when only the first row is trained in Sail or Pega UI or Coach Views or whatever that framework is, all my work is bottlenecked by these 4 people. But if I can build this and I can give it to the entire organization, I've actually got agility. I can take a first-year Java programmer and go, you know what? Don't worry about all this BPMN stuff. Here's a cool page. Make it look even cooler, right? You just do this thing, and you guys do that other thing. The way that I've always defined agility is the ability to take nuanced small steps and to be able to recover from mistakes. What we're trying to do is bring that to the table in a way that doesn't tie you to a large vendor. And incidentally, we also work ourselves out of a job with this. So everything that we generate is 100% open source. So if you don't want our tool anymore, that's perfectly fine. You can take the product, what we have, and use it for your purposes. Let's see here. There's just one other thing I want to show you guys, because I think it just looks cool. So one of the things that we do is that we allow you to define a service tier. So I can actually come into this guy, and I can create a sequence of microservices. And incidentally, you can set these up so that they're actually cached by Redis or by Hazelcast. So if you have a sequence of calls that you make, and we restore the result of one and we don't get the output, then you can come back and bring that back. So if you come here, I think I have a Swagger file here open somewhere. You can come here, and you can say, hey, I want to import from Swagger. You put this in. It actually goes out and talks to that guy and builds up your entities for you. So over here, get pet by ID. I can bring that in. And what it's saying here is that, hey, I see that you already have a pet object. Do you want me to override that entity? Or do you want to give it a prefix so this is distinct from that pet? So I'm going to override in this case. And I want to do things like say, hey, I'm going to run this. So I want to see if this actually works. So I can actually test it at runtime here to make sure that it actually works. A common problem that I run into when I'm doing delivery is that my process applications can get ahead of the actual underlying integration tier. So one of the ways that we address that is that we actually provide a mechanism so that you can define what a mock response would be for the service that you're calling. So in this particular case, I can say, hey, you know what? Just give me an empty pet object and return this until such time as that service is ready to be called. As far as sort of the more BPM-y aspects of this, I have capacity to define a ton of stuff. And I can actually pull this in from various environments. I can generate requirements docs. So I can actually come into here, and all the documentation that I've created for this process comes back in a standard document with embedded images and all the entities that I've defined. So let me see if I can bring this back up. Okay. I was having so much fun. So it actually comes back and it builds out your process, it builds out your data elements, and it captures all the information that you've captured in there, including any business rules, any simulations, and optimization information that you've put into it. Okay, sorry folks, thanks.
Thank you.